Tánaiste, I would have worked in the construction sector for many years, be it at housing, be it at pipework or whatever. Last Saturday night, I watched the news, and the headline on it from your Ardèche was you announcing Fine Gael basically committing to 40,000 houses every year. And that's great if you have a way of knowing how to do this. And from someone that has worked in the sector for many years, I said to myself, what cunning plan has our Tánaiste come up with? Besides the point of having, if even half it was affordable, or social housing, you'd want about 10 billion and 10 billion private sector. But can you tell me how we get over the obstacles, Tánaiste, that there's 200 quarries at the moment that are in a planning quagmire? Can you tell me how the 14 or 15,000 houses that are on judicial review are going to get sorted, because unfortunately things are being challenged day in, day out? Can you tell me how the forward planning of Irish water is not funded, because I talk to them on a regular basis, for the next 4 to 5 years, because if you don't do that, then you will have a problem? Can you tell me, and in talking, or anybody, you might know about it, but a thing called Dundee, if you look at it round Dublin or any other city, that a person, first of all, there's no lorry driver to take the muck away. You can't get a theory test, or you can't even get an application or a license to go for it at the moment if you do want to go down that road. Block laying, Tánaiste, in a rural house, in a rural area, has gone from 6,000 to 16,000. Timber at the moment has gone up 46%. I have spoke to you personally about the saga that's in Ireland. But not alone Ireland, you bring in timber as well, and it's a bidding market. It's not about can we get it now. It's not about the price, it's can we get it. Because America and other countries, when the boat is on the high seas, are giving better prices. And the other side of it, Tánaiste, and I know you have spoke about it before, apprenticeships. We seem to push, be it people that's accountants or whatever, and rightly so, on a pedestal. But the person that's the block layer, or what I call the wet trades, or any apprentice, we don't seem to put them on the pedestal of people that go down a different road. And whether we like it or whether we don't, if we don't have those people that can drive the digger, lay the pipe, put down the tar, lay the blocks, or do the steel structure, well, we won't have someone within it with the computer. And I am asking you, Tánaiste, could you shed the light to me? Because it's like Christy Moore's song. I thought about it for a while, and the dream turned into a nightmare for me when I start saying, how do we get around all this?
Thank you,
and the other part of this is that last week in the Climate Action Bill, you have the Greens that are delusional in my world, that believe that we're going to reduce emissions when we need to build the 40,000 houses, and I don't disagree with you, but tell me how we can square the circle.
Tánaiste to reply.
Thanks very much, Deputy. I know very few people in this House, including me, who spend a long time or spend much time reading manifestos of political parties, but the commitment to increase housing supply to 35 to 40,000 new homes was contained in the Fine Gael manifesto for the last general election, and I restated that ambition at the weekend, and I stand over the fact that I did so. Back in 2016, we were only building 5,000 or 6,000 homes a year. We're now up to around 20,000, notwithstanding the fact that construction was blighted by the pandemic. We used to build 80,000 a year, and I believe setting the ambition of getting to 40,000 a year is ambitious, but it is realistic. It's double where we are now. It's half where we were during the housing boom some time ago. I'm not saying we can do it next year. Don't get me wrong on that, and that's certainly not what I said, but I do think we can scale up to it. We think about 20,000 public and private built this year. Perhaps we can go 25, 30, 35, 40. Perhaps we can go a bit faster, 27, 34, 41. And that's the kind of thing that we're talking about now in government as we put together the Housing for All policy, which is the new housing policy for government replacing Rebuilding Ireland. I see Davies today suggested that wasn't enough. In their report today, you may have seen they're saying that we should build, or at least that we need to build 200,000 new homes in 3 years. Unfortunately, I don't believe that that's possible to scale up to 60 or 70,000 in such a time frame. And I take your point, Deputy. If it was easy to do, it would have been done by now. It's not. Of course it's not. We've issues around access to capital, both for government and for private builders. We've issues around a shortage of skilled labour. We've issues around the availability of serviced land by Irish Water, by local authorities. We've issues around the planning process, which takes very long in this state and often ends up stuck in judicial reviews. We've issues around the availability of materials, steel becoming more expensive and less available because of this central bank fueled boom around the world, where central banks have printed 9 trillion euros, and that has driven up the cost of commodities and the boom that is happening in China, for example. So, you know, I think while people may not say it publicly, I think everyone privately in this House understands that there's nobody in this House who wouldn't like to see more houses built as quickly as possible. But there are lots of constraints, and those constraints aren't always under control. But we'll do the best to deal with them as best we can, and that does involve increasing government investment in public housing, of which social housing will be the major part. It does involve the government investing in apprenticeships, and you'll know what Minister Harris is doing in that regard. Some real success in getting more people into apprenticeships, setting the target of 10,000 a year. It will mean government trying to make sure that more sites are serviced through programmes like LIHAF, through the capital budget of Irish Water. But beyond that, there will be things outside of our control, like the availability of materials, one of which you mentioned.
Deputy Michael Fitzmaurice.
Thank you for your answer. But the first thing I think that needs to be realised is we need to get away from the boom bang. That's why apprenticeships are very reluctant to go in. And while Minister Harris is bringing stuff forward, and I welcome that, the wet trades is the one that there doesn't seem to be a lot of movement in. The other side of it, Taoiseach, is there seems to be a ferocious focus on cities. And if you look at the price of land in the smaller towns or villages, you would be getting better value for money. And the other thing we need to make sure, Taoiseach, is on the likes of procurement. What seems to happen in this country is that one big guy is applying for 600 houses or 500 houses. There's a lot of smaller builders there that wouldn't have the capital to be into that league, but would be well capable of building the 4 or the 5. And much makes more. And if you give them the opportunity to do that, as well as trying to bring older houses in rural areas back in, given incentives for it. But I do think, Taoiseach, that over the next 6 months, if you don't knuckle down to the different problems that I highlighted, and this is coming from looking at the industry, that it will never be solved or we'll never get to 40,000 if we don't sort out the planning issues and all the other issues that I highlighted that's causing a problem and a log jam in the housing industry.
Thanks, thanks, Deputy. And I don't disagree with what you're saying. There are so many different bottlenecks, so many different points where you can run into trouble in terms of housing construction, and you have to deal with them all to get a clear flowing pipeline of housing, which is what we want. And I agree with you that every town and village in Ireland should be able to expand. I don't mean a return to sprawl. I don't mean a return to sprawl or development distant from the major cities, but I do think any town in Ireland should be able to expand a bit. We need to make sure that that's reflected in our planning laws. And it's those smaller builders that can build houses in their 4s and 5s on relatively small sites, relatively inexpensively, that can make a big difference for people. And that's part of what HBFI is supposed to be doing in lending to those small builders, and it is doing, but perhaps not to the extent that it should be. I think you're right as well, meeting that target of 40,000 houses per year. Haven't decided which year that's going to be yet, but as soon as possible, isn't just about building new houses from scratch. It has to be about bringing derelict houses back into use. And also, although I wouldn't count this in the 40, making sure that where there are properties that are vacant, that people have to bring them back into use.